Can you believe it? We're on day 28 of the 30-day craft room organization challenge. If you've made it this far, congratulations. Today we're talking labeling, probably one of my favorite topics for organizing. Why? Well, remember that 7.5 hours that we spend per week looking for things? That's why I love labeling. I label absolutely everything, even the obvious, like my label maker. It's fun too. So it really does help your brain reduce the mental processes necessary by searching for things and pulling out drawers. And it really just helps alleviate stress when everything is clearly labeled. So remember those zones that you created at the beginning of the challenge? And you put up sticky notes everywhere to label your zones? It's now time to take down those sticky notes and permanently label your zones. So how do you do that? Well, there's lots of different ways, but I strongly suggest that you get yourself a label maker if you don't have one already. Now, this is my sorted out organizing bag that I take with me when I organize people's houses. It's a 31 bag, and I love it because it has lots of pockets. And so over here, there are 3 pockets, and I specifically bought this label maker because it fit into one of the pockets. And I like it, but I don't love it because when you press print, there's a bunch of white space on either side of the text that you're printing out. So the other label maker that I have is another brother, and this one I like a little bit more. So if you're interested in either of these, you can find the description, the link to these in the description below. But if you have a label maker that you love, I would love for you to post it over in the Stamp with Cheryl Facebook group over on the corresponding thread where we're talking about labeling. Okay, so this is what I use to label pretty much everything. But there are also other fun ways to do it, like using a Cricut or a Scan and Cut or a Silhouette machine. I don't have any of those, so I just stick with the standard label maker. So today I want to share with you 6 areas in your craft room that I recommend labeling if you haven't already done so. So the first would be your cards that you've made that you plan to send or sell. Secondly would be your stamps. Third would be your alcohol markers or your blends. Fourth would be your dies. Fifth are your embossing folders. And 6 would be your cardstock colors. Number 1 is cards to send or sell. So you'll want to get all of yours together and then try and come up with categories that will help you find exactly what you need. So I cut up pieces of cardboard and then use my label maker to come up with labels. And I keep mine in the spinning rack, as you see here. But you could also use like photo boxes. These are from Hobby Lobby, and I love those because there's a space to put a category on the front. Or if you just have a few, I created a little box labeled cards on the front and then dividers on the inside by holiday. Category number 2 to label are your stamps. I think the most important part is to put a price on them. So in the upper right hand corner, I label the price as I buy them using little Avery stickers, and you can find the link in the description below here in this video. The next thing I would do is after a stamp set retires, I use a highlighter to color it to show that it has been retired, and I move it to a separate section on my shelf. And then I also use a color-coded circle sticker on the spine to indicate the Christmas stamps. Another suggestion, like we talked about a couple days ago, is with paper pumpkin. So I suggest trying to get those together and labeled. In my case, I did it by year. Category 3 to label would be your blends. I use my label maker to put a little label on the cap. The L stands for light and the D stands for dark because they come in a pack of 2 in the light and dark shade. And then I just put an initial to help me remember what's what. It just makes it easier to match up the 2 colors on the shelf, especially if other people are using your markers. I thought it might be helpful. Category number 4 to label are your dies. Now, if you keep them in the original packaging, in the bottom left-hand corner, it tells you how many dies are included in that set. But since I keep mine on magnet cards from Stamp and Storage, and you can see the link below in the description, make sure you label them with the name of the die set, but also how many dies are included.
That way you can always confirm that you have all of the dies back in the proper space by just doing a quick count using that number. And again, it's always helpful to have them separated by current and retired. I just die cut out an oval here and then used a chalk marker to label them and attached it with a cute binder clip. Okay, this is probably the most important category to label: embossing folders. So first we have 3 different kinds. So I suggest labeling them by the name of the folder as well as the type. So standard, 3-dimensional, and dynamic, which is now retired. So the dynamic folders have both a Sizzix and a Stampin' Up! Logo. This was during the transition from the previous Big Shot to the current Stampin' Up! Emboss and die cut machine. So you can see here that the corrugated folder is a dynamic, but keep in mind that there were actually 10 embossing folders that were released in both versions, the 3D and the dynamic. So here are the 10 folders: basket weave, corrugated, country floral, lace, layered leaves, pine wood planks, seasonal wreath, subtle, tin tile, and tufted. So if you have any of those folders, you will want to carefully figure out, is it a 3D version or a dynamic version? And you can tell whether or not there's just the Stampin' Up! Logo, which would mean it's 3D, or both the Sizzix and Stampin' Up! Logos, which would mean it's dynamic. So it is important to label the type because that will determine what sandwich you use when you run it through the machine. So once you get all of yours labeled, I suggest printing out a sign. I've actually included one here in the description below in the video that you can print out. But knowing if it's a standard, 3D, or dynamic will determine what sandwich and what plates to use. The last category to label, cardstock, is the most fun. Now that you've got all your cardstock grouped by color, you'll want to label. So I do mine by color family, and so I have a label up at the top to show the different color families. But then just during this challenge, I decided to label by individual color. So if that interests you, here's a suggestion on how to do it. I printed out the index from the catalog, and you can find the link in the description below if you want to do the same. Then you can print it out on Avery sticker paper and use a 1/2-inch punch to punch out each individual sticker. That makes a fun, easy way to display the names and colors.
So I hope you've gotten lots of great ideas today about how you can go around and label all the different areas in your craft room or the different craft supplies. I can't wait for you to post pictures of what you like to label over in the Stamp with Cheryl Facebook group. And make sure you check back tomorrow when we're going to be talking about cataloging our craft supplies.